Los Angeles City gleamed that afternoon, the late sunlight casting a hazy amber glow across the sky. Luxury cars glided smoothly along Wilshire Boulevard like moving jewels, their glossy paint capturing the sunset's light. Standing out on that boulevard was the Crescent Imperial, a hotel so grand it felt less like a building and more like a monument to opulence. Its white marble facade rose majestically edged with gleaming gold that reflected the sunset's glow. Crescent was more than just a place to stay. It was a statement, a closed world where only the wealthiest and most powerful truly belonged. Amara Ward stood at the edge of the arched entrance, looking up at the giant gold-trimmed glass doors. She wore only a simple beige dress and an old cardigan. Her shoes were worn, and the canvas bag on her shoulder had been with her for years, completely unlike the shiny designer bags most guests carried. In a city where appearances often demand respect, Amara knew she stood out as an exception, and that was exactly what she wanted. Her husband, Ethan Ward, had begged her to let staff escort her straight from the car to the suite, but Amara preferred to walk quietly on her own, avoiding attention. Though Ethan had built a massive fortune, billions from real estate and investments, Amara never let wealth redefine who she was. She wanted to keep her world simple, even if it meant enduring skeptical looks. A valet ran over to take the keys, his face polite, but his eyes revealing a hint of curiosity. "Welcome to the Crescent Imperial, ma'am," he said courteously, though he couldn't hide the quick glance down at Amara's simple outfit. She just smiled slightly. She was used to this. The world rarely saw her as a complete person. It only saw a figure to judge. Inside the hotel, the grand lobby stretched out like the entrance to a palace. The white marble floor gleamed under crystal chandeliers, each beam of light breaking into thousands of tiny diamond-like fragments. Elegant guests glide by in silk dresses and tailored suits, their laughter echoing like a melody meant only for those who belong. The air carries a faint scent of jasmine mixed with leather, a carefully chosen fragrance to assert status. Behind the reception desk, staff in neat uniforms move rhythmically, precisely like a well-rehearsed dance. Amara pauses. Her footsteps softly tap on the stone floor as her eyes quietly observe. She has entered many five-star hotels before, but every time a vague unease rises in her chest. People rarely think of her as a guest. She's learned to maintain her composure, but the sting from judgment has never disappeared. "Excuse me, ma'am." A cold voice cuts through the atmosphere. Amara turns around. A tall man around 50 years old is walking quickly toward her. He wears a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, his hair slicked back. On his chest is a name tag, Mr. Collins, hotel manager. His eyes are not welcoming. They are scrutinizing, searching as if detecting a stain in this flawless space. "Yes," Amara replies, keeping her voice calm. "This area is for registered guests." Only Collins says, his tone outwardly polite, but full of condescension. "The staff entrance is at the back, through the service corridor. Next time, I suggest you use that route." For a moment, Amara can't comprehend. She blinks, piecing the meaning together in her mind. The staff entrance. He thinks she's a servant. "I'm not," she tries to explain, but Collins cuts her off, lowering his voice. "But with a firm gaze, I know Crescent overwhelms people. But loitering here won't help. If you're here to apply for a job, contact Human Resources. Don't stray into the main lobby." A burning wave rises in Amara's chest. She tightens her bag strap, her fingers turning white. She's endured assumptions like this many times, in stores, restaurants, even places where she's a shareholder no one knows about. Every time she swallows her pride and walks away. But tonight, something is different. Maybe it was the way Collins casually dismissed her presence under the curious gazes of everyone around. The whispers were like small knives piercing the air. "I'm not an employee," Amara said, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here as a guest." Collins raised an eyebrow, a faint smile flickering as if indulging a naive fool. "Of course," he drawled. "So please tell me your room number, or the name of the person you're here to see." Amara took a deep breath, holding herself steady. "Ward," she answered, sweet under the name Ward. Colin's smile faltered for a moment, then returned sharper this time. He adjusted his tie, squinting. "Ward, The hotel does have a Mr. Ethan Ward staying here, but forgive me if I find it hard to believe you're with him." Those words landed like a slap, calm, yet cruel. The space around them fell silent. Amara felt dozens of eyes closing in, suspicious and scrutinizing. This wasn't the first time someone doubted her presence. But right here at the Crescent Imperial, she refused to let her voice tremble. "You'll believe me soon enough," Amara whispered, her chin lifting in a quiet challenge. Collins laughed a hollow sound. "I'm sure you will," he muttered, and then leaned aside to let her pass. But his gaze hung over her like a suspended verdict with every step she took. He didn't invite her to the front desk, nor did he offer any support, and only cold eyes tracking her as she moved toward the reception. Amara's heart pounded wildly, each beat louder than the murmurs in the lobby. She knew this was just the beginning. And though shame weighed heavy on her chest, another fire had just been lit, the fire of resistance. Amara walked straight to the reception desk, her hand gripping the bag strap tightly, footsteps tapping lightly on the polished marble floor. The receptionist smiled professionally, but when she glanced at Colin's eyes, her expression froze. The atmosphere in the vast lobby suddenly stiffened like fragile glass. Amara cleared her throat softly. "I have a reservation under the name Ward. Please confirm." The receptionist typed quickly, then her eyes widened for a moment. "Yes, ma'am, there is indeed a suite reserved under the name Ethan Ward." Colin stood right beside her, arms crossed, a smirk playing at his lips, as if the confirmation only made him more suspicious. He leaned close to the front desk, his voice deepening loud enough for nearby guests to hear clearly. "It's Mr. Ward's room, but who's to say this isn't someone just using his name?" A ripple of whispers broke out. A few guests turned their heads, eyes full of curiosity. A blonde woman in a sequin dress covered her mouth and whispered, "Maybe she's just faking it to sneak in." The man with her nodded, his gaze judging. Amara felt her cheeks flush, but she kept her voice steady. "I already said, I'm here as a guest. I deserve respect just like anyone else in this lobby." Collins let out a short laugh that echoed through the hall. "The back to where is home. You walk in here looking like that." He jerked his chin toward Amara's plain dress and worn shoes. "Do you think the Crescent Imperial Hotel is someplace anyone can just walk into?" Those words cut like a knife. Amara heard a few scattered giggles coming from a corner of the lobby. A group of young men in suits near the bar glanced over, one smirking. "Maybe she's here to apply for housekeeping." Amara's heart ached, but her eyes shone with determination. "I don't need to dress fancy to prove my worth." Colin stepped closer, his tone harsher, almost scolding. "Your worth. Here worth is measured by class and ability to pay. And with that outfit..." He scanned Amara from head to toe. "I'm afraid you're just a nuisance here." The crowd began to pause, drawn into the confrontation. The usually noisy hotel lobby fell silent, Colin's voice the only thing echoing. The staff hesitated, too afraid to interrupt. Amara clenched her fists, her voice rising louder and clearer this time. "You have no right to decide whether I belong here. I have a valid reservation. You're insulting me in front of everyone." The entire lobby seemed to freeze. Collins sneered, his face tense with anger, mixed with arrogance. "If you don't leave here immediately, I will call security. People like you," he emphasized each word, "never belong here." The accusation fell like a heavy, harsh iron bell. All eyes turned toward Amara. She felt her heart pounding wildly in her chest, her heavy breathing echoing beneath the high ceiling. A surge of boiling anger rose within her, accompanied by a strange sense of pride. Amara lifted her head, meeting Colin's gaze directly. "I'm not going anywhere. You're discriminating against and humiliating me just because of my appearance." Some young guests near the front desk murmured in agreement, while a middle-aged woman shook her head disapprovingly at Colin's attitude. But most remained silent, avoiding eye contact. That silence made Amara feel isolated, as if she were fighting alone against dozens of cold stares. Collins growled, his face flushed red. "You're disturbing the order. Security." The call rang out like a sentence being passed. Two security guards in black suits appeared from the hallway, moving swiftly toward the lobby. A tense atmosphere engulfed the space like the calm before a storm. Amara took a deep breath, feeling a fiery heat rise through her veins. She knew every look and every word from today would echo on. And in that moment, she vowed to herself that this humiliation would not be buried in silence. The two guards in black suits quickened their steps toward the lobby, their leather shoes tapping evenly on the marble floor. The curious crowd glanced over, some whispering as if watching an uninvited drama. A waiter tried to step forward to intervene, but Colin's cold, steely gaze stopped him in his tracks. Amara stood still, gripping her bag handle tightly, breathing deeply to stay calm. But inside her heart was pounding like a war drum. "Take her out!" Collins ordered, his voice commanding, eyes fixed on Amara as if she were a stain on his perfect picture. One of the guards hesitated, speaking up. "Sir, maybe verify the room first." Collins cut him off sharply. "No need. I know this type of person. Dressing like that, does she think she's a VIP guest? It's just a pathetic act of impersonation." A middle-aged male guest holding a glass of red wine sneered. "He's right, who would wear clothes like that here?" She wanted to shout, to scream loudly so everyone could know the truth, but instead she kept her voice calm. Her eyes determined. "I'm not going anywhere. I am a guest here, and you have no right to insult me like that." He stared at Amara with sharp eyes, his voice lowering but chilling to the bone. "You should know your place. This hotel is not for ordinary people to barge in. You might fool others, but you won't fool me." But no one dared to speak up. Silence stretched on, with only the soft piano music from the corner sounding strangely out of place, completely clashing with the suffocating atmosphere. Amara slowly lifted her chin, her voice clear, though slightly trembling, but firm. "You know nothing about me, and you have no right to decide where I belong." A stunned murmur rose from the crowd. He quickly rummaged inside, pulling out a small leather wallet. "Let's see." Collins flipped open the wallet, holding up Amara's ID card. "Amara Ward. Sounds fancy enough. But unfortunately, this wallet is too tattered to convince me." The dry sound of it dropping was like a slap in the silent crowd. Amara froze, her eyes flashing with pain and anger. She bent down to pick up the wallet, her hand trembling, but her voice steady. "You just insulted me in front of everyone here, and you will have to take responsibility." She thought, who would believe a woman dressed like a servant? "I'm the manager here. I decide who stays and who goes." The crowd murmured, "Oh," spreading through the room. Some guests began to shake their heads, clearly uncomfortable with Mr. Collins' behavior. But still no one dared to step forward. A long moment of silence followed. Amara felt like she was standing alone against the whole world, then the bright crystal lights above, shining down, revealing every tremble in her hands. But inside her heart, a proud fire blazed fiercely. She straightened her back, eyes blazing, her voice ringing throughout the hall. "I am not afraid of you, and I will not stay silent. The truth will be revealed." Just then, the large glass door behind her swung open. A cold breeze rushed in, carrying the noise of the city street, and in the doorway, a tall figure appeared. A familiar silhouette known to everyone in the financial world. Ethan Ward. The air in the hall suddenly froze. The atmosphere in the hotel lobby fell silent as the tall figure stepped inside. The glass door behind Amara closed, leaving a heavy silence. Ethan Ward stood there wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit. His salt and pepper hair neatly styled his deep blue eyes, radiating a natural authority without effort. He was known in the financial world as a genius investor, a reclusive billionaire who shunned media attention. But those who had faced him directly could never forget that aura. A calm strength that made the entire room feel as if it shrank around him. "Amara." His voice rang out deep and warm, cutting through the chaos. Amara turned around, her eyes full of emotion. With just one look from her husband, she felt the weight pressing down on her shoulders lift. Mr. Collins stood frozen, his eyes revealing obvious confusion. He quickly regained his composure, bowing politely. "Mr. Ward, it's an honor to welcome you. Please forgive A little misunderstanding with my staff here." Amara took a deep breath, turned to look Collins straight in the eye. Her voice icy. "Staff, did you just call me that?" Silence fell over the room. The guests in the hall all looked at Collins expectantly. He turned pale, his lips moving but no words coming out. Ethan stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Amara right in front of everyone. The gesture was simple but powerful, instantly dispelling any lingering doubts. Some guests breathed a sigh of relief, while a few covered their mouths in surprise. Collins's eyes widened, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. He stammered, She is..." Ethan looked up, his voice firm and echoing throughout the hall. "This is my wife, Amara Ward." The contemptuous looks from before turned into shock, even awkwardness. Some guests quickly exchanged apologetic glances toward Amara, while a few blushed, realizing they had been laughing along with Collins. Collins was speechless. His face shifted from stunned to pale, as if all the blood had drained from his body. He forced a smile, his voice trembling. "It's just security protocol, Ethan squeezed Amara's hand, his cold gaze piercing Collins. "You insulted my wife. You demeaned her dignity just because of her simple attire, just because you thought you had the right to decide who belongs here." All eyes were fixed on Collins, witnessing the fall of a once powerful man. Collins swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his forehead. He tried to stammer an excuse. She entered without. "Your responsibility is to ensure safety and respect for all customers, not to insult and discriminate. You forgot the most basic principle of your profession." She didn't need to yell or scream. Ethan's very presence made the truth speak for itself. A woman near the bar spontaneously applauded, the sound echoing in the quiet space. Soon after, others joined in, the applause swelling like a wave, not for Collins, but for Amara, the woman who maintained her dignity even under the heaviest insult. Collins lowered his head, his face burning with shame. He took a step back, his voice weak. "I apologize, Mrs. Ward. I really didn't know." Amara looked at him calmly but firmly. "That's exactly the problem, Collins. You didn't need to know. You shouldn't have to know who is the billionaire's wife and who isn't. You just need to treat everyone as people worthy of respect." The crowd fell silent, many bowing their heads in thought. Collins slumped his shoulders, his eyes lost, no longer carrying the arrogance he once had. Ethan placed a hand on Amara's shoulder and turned to Collins. "We will speak with the board. But you should know your career ends right here." He wanted to argue, but his lips moved without making a sound. Amara turned and with her husband headed toward the elevator leading to the suite. Their footsteps echoed strong and proud. All eyes followed them, no longer filled with doubt or contempt, but with respect and shame. Before stepping into the elevator, Amara stopped and looked back at Collins one last time. Her voice rang clear and proud. "Today you insulted me, but in truth you only humiliated yourself." The hotel lobby was silent. Collins stood frozen in place, his face downcast, still hearing the applause that had been for Amara ringing in his ears. The next morning, the sky over Los Angeles was crystal clear, sunlight sparkling like gold across the Crescent Imperial's glass roof. But inside the hotel, the atmosphere was completely different from its usual luxury. The once quiet halls now buzzed with whispers, staff murmured to each other, and guests quietly retold last night's story like breaking news. The rumor spread faster than any Wynn manager. Collins had insulted the wife of one of America's most powerful billionaires. On the 10th floor conference room, the hotel's board was urgently summoned. At the polished walnut table sat the hotel's CEO, Margaret Hayes, her face tense. She knew that if handled poorly, Crescent Imperial could lose the reputation it had built over decades. The door opened. Ethan and Amara stepped inside. The atmosphere changed immediately. Several senior managers stood abruptly and hurriedly bowed their heads in greeting. Amara remained calm, her eyes shining with quiet strength and firmness. Margaret quickly approached, forcing a smile. "Mr. Ward, Mrs. Ward, I am deeply sorry for the embarrassing incident last night. We are committed to handling this appropriately. Collins publicly insulted my wife in front of dozens of guests. And more importantly, he revealed a deep-rooted disease prejudice and discrimination within this hotel's management system. The other managers lowered their heads, not daring to look up. Amara spoke up, her voice clear and each word firm. I don't need a private apology behind closed doors. I need change. Not just for me, but for every guest who has ever walked into this hotel and been looked down upon. He looked decades older overnight, with dark circles under his eyes and trembling hands. Collins, she said heavily, you are suspended immediately pending an internal investigation. Your behavior has crossed the line. He turned to Ethan and Amara, about to justify himself, but hesitated under Ethan's cold stare. He stammered a few meaningless words, then bowed his head and hurried out of the room, looking lost and pitiful. Amara watched him leave, feeling no satisfaction, only a quiet sadness. Can arrogance and prejudice really destroy a person so quickly? Ethan turned to Margaret. We won't sue if Crescent truly changes, but I want the apology to be made publicly, not just to Amara as my wife, but to any woman who's ever been belittled like that. Margaret nodded repeatedly. Please give us a chance to make things right. The public press conference. That afternoon, the hotel lobby was packed with reporters. Cameras flashed continuously, microphones held high. On the podium, Margaret stood in the center, flanked by Ethan and Amara. We, Crescent Imperial, officially apologize to Mrs. Amara Ward, Margaret began, her voice slightly trembling. We take responsibility for the wrongful and unprofessional actions of Manager Collins. He has been suspended, and we will implement anti-discrimination training for all staff. The hotel is committed to becoming a place where everyone is respected equally. Camera shutters clicked non-stop. Reporters kept asking questions, but Margaret raised her hand, handing the microphone to Amara. Amara stepped forward, her gaze calm yet radiant. The entire room fell silent, as if waiting for a declaration. Last night, I was humiliated, not because I did anything wrong, but because my appearance didn't fit someone else's prejudice. I was told I didn't belong here. She paused, looking directly into the camera. But I want to make it clear. No one has the right to decide where we belong. Dignity isn't measured by clothes, skin color, or wealth. Dignity is something inherent in every human being. In the audience, some nodded, others had tears in their eyes. Amara continued, I am not speaking here as the wife of billionaire Ethan Ward. I speak as a woman who has endured discrimination, and I'm certain there are thousands, millions out there who have experienced the same. I hope that from today at least, some of these prejudices will change. Applause erupted. Reporters all stood up at once, the applause lasting, drowning out the sound of cameras. Ethan placed his hand on Amara's shoulder, his eyes full of pride. Standing behind the podium, Margaret bowed her head, realizing Crescent Imperial had just faced a seismic shift. But she also knew from now on the hotel would have to walk a new path, a path of transparency and fairness. Amara stepped back, taking Ethan's hand. She felt relieved, but also a new strength rising within her. The words she had just spoken were not only for herself, but for all who had ever been trampled on in their dignity. Ethan gently leaned in and whispered, You did what many are afraid to do. I'm proud of you. Amara smiled, fully aware in her heart the battle wasn't over here. It had only just begun.